Welcome to the Bark and Bite. My name is Brandon Baker of Black Dog Barbecue, and today I'm teaming back up with Charborough Grills to show you how to make grilled chicken thighs with an Irish whiskey infused barbecue glaze. Let's check it out. Grilled chicken thighs are one of my favorite cuts of meat to make, and honestly I make them more so than probably anything else. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the taste. It's an incredibly fatty cut of meat, so that fat is going to provide a lot of flavor. The second part about that is price. No matter what cut of meat that you get at the store, really, it's going to be a lot cheaper than your other protein options for the most part. The chicken thighs I got today were about $1.69 a pound, which is a great deal. Now, in terms of how we're going to be cooking these, as I mentioned, we're going to be grilling these today. And you can make this same recipe whether you grill it, whether you bake it in the oven, or whether you smoke it. A lot of different ways you could go with that. But today, just in terms of time, we're going to grill it. And so with that, you've got to be a little careful. So like I mentioned a second ago, thighs are going to be an extremely fatty cut of meat. So what grilling that does is it allows you to render that fat significantly faster than, say, if you smoked it or even if you baked it in the oven. You know, a lot of times people on the barbecue competition circuit, they'll either trim the fat off of the skin itself by shaving it off, or they'll use a jacquard so you can puncture holes in the skin of the chicken thighs so it'll render faster. Now in the backyard setting, that's really unnecessary. It's something we won't take the time to do today because that can take upwards of 15 to 20 minutes to trim a single chicken thigh. And when we're considering time as a major variable here, we wanna make sure that we're skipping that step. So since we're grilling this over a traditional propane gas grill, we know that that heat source is gonna be very close to the grates itself. So the way that we're gonna do that so that we don't burn the chicken skin is we're gonna cook it over low to medium low heat, skin side down to start for just a couple minutes so we can get that skin nice and crispy. Once we do that, I'm going to move it over to the other side so that we can cook it indirectly skin side up. That's going to allow us to get that crispy skin on the chicken and allow the chicken to cook all the way through. Now, St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner, which is why I'm going to be making an Irish whiskey infused barbecue sauce. If you wanted to, you could certainly leave the whiskey out, but it does add another layer of flavor that really adds to the sauce itself. Now, the sauce we're going to be making today is going to be a ketchup-based sauce, but we're going to have plenty of sweetness with both molasses, honey, and then a little bit of brown sugar as well. In addition to that, we'll add some spices in there. And finally, since we are cooking chicken, I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of lemon juice at the end because that does pair so well with chicken. But we're gonna combine all of those ingredients in a saucepan, reduce that down, and then brush it on the chicken once it reaches an internal temperature of about 165 degrees. Now, as far as the grill I'll be cooking on today, I'm gonna be using Charborough's 3-burner Pro Series gas grill. I really like using this grill. As you guys know, I've cooked on it a lot, but for this particular purpose, it works great because you've got the side burner where I can make the sauce, as well as, of course, the traditional grates where I can cook that chicken over both direct and indirect heat. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get the grill on, season up those chicken thighs, and we can get the process started. I'm gonna season up these thighs with a basic salt, pepper, and garlic rub. Feel free to substitute this with a 1-to-1 ratio of salt to pepper, plus a half dose ratio of garlic in there if you'd like to make that at home yourself. But I'm gonna season the top of these. I'm also gonna season underneath the skin as well as the bottom side. Take a look at the chicken skin here. You know, a second ago when I mentioned it being a very fatty cut of meat, a lot of that fat is on the skin. All of this yellow here is a very thick layer of fat. That's why I mentioned something such as a jacquard or even skinning some of this off could be beneficial, but again, that's gonna take a lot more time. But I just wanted to show you guys that for a second so you could see what I was talking about. Besides that, there's actually a lot of fat here within the meat itself. You've got different little pockets here that you could also thin out if you wanted to. But today, again, I'm just going to flip this over and we're gonna season up this side, not worry about getting all that excess fat off, because honestly, when it's on the grill, it's gonna do a good enough job itself, really rendering most of that. And we're just gonna fold the skin back over once we've seasoned that up. So I just like to tidy these back up at the end, honestly, so that we can see kind of what the shape we want them to be. Just a little tip, when you throw them on the grill, go ahead again, kind of shape them up a little bit, because how you put them on the grill is how they are going to look in terms of shape when they're done. And with that, we have a fully seasoned chicken thigh. So we are gonna take these and throw them on the grill. So before we even make the thighs, we're gonna make the sauce first, because I want the sauce to be ready so that we can brush it on when that chicken is done cooking. It's not gonna be a long process. We're gonna start this time by reducing the Irish whiskey first. Once that's reduced down to kind of a syrupy consistency, we'll add in all the remaining ingredients and let those cook just long enough for it to reduce a little bit further and for all of those flavors to mix, making sure to give it a good stir along the way as we go. We've been reducing this whiskey for more than 5 minutes now, and it's already less than half of the original volume that was there. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in the other ingredients right now. We're gonna season it up with a little salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. Here's our sweeteners, and we'll finish it off with our liquids. Just giving it a good mix, then we'll let it finish cooking. Now, I could let this reduce down further, but for the fact that I'm making this a glaze, I don't want this to be too thick, so I'm gonna be brushing it on the chicken. So I just turned the heat off. I'm gonna add in some butter for a little bit creamier texture, as well as some lemon juice, which again is just gonna pronounce these flavors and also pair really well with the chicken, but gonna do that and take this off heat. All right, so I'm gonna keep a close eye here on this chicken for the next few minutes to make sure we don't burn the skin. But once we have it nice and crispy, I'm gonna flip these over and move them over to indirect heat to finish cooking. All right, skin that looks just like this is exactly what we're looking for. It's got a nice crisp exterior, which took about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that, to get to this point. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna take each one of these chicken thighs, we're gonna move it over to the indirect side of the grill and continue finishing the cook. So something I want to point out real quick, if you notice the skin is starting to really kind of pull back from the thigh itself, that's okay. And honestly, the reason that happened is because of the fact that I pulled the skin back so I could season underneath on the meaty side of the thigh itself. It was being held together by both fat and then some connective tissue as well. You can certainly leave that and skip that step that I did if you want the skin to be more all-encompassing around the thigh itself. But really, it's a question of flavor versus appearance. And a lot of times, you know, you could go either way too, but for today, just to show you how to properly season the chicken thigh to get the maximum amount of flavor with just a basic rub, I wanted to show you this route. So just keep that in mind and prepare the chicken how you prefer when it comes to seasoning the underside of the thigh or leaving that skin intact. All right, grand total, we've had these thighs on the grill for about 25 minutes now, and they are just about 165 degrees. So we're gonna go ahead and glaze them up. But before I do that, it's important to note why I'm mentioning 165 degrees. That's the minimum internal temperature that you wanna make sure your chicken is cooked through so that you avoid getting any food poisoning or any other type of illness. Now that being said, I like to take thighs, wings, and drumsticks well beyond 165 degrees. Most of the time I'm shooting for about 180 to 190 degrees because then you can maximize the crispiness of the outside while still getting a juicy internal product because they have so much fat in them. I'm gonna keep the chicken on the grill just long enough for this glaze to set, then we're gonna go ahead and pull these off and serve them up. All right, the glaze is set and we are gonna pull these off the grill. All right, we just pulled the chicken off the grill, and just for a quick recap, we grilled this chicken skin side down for just under 10 minutes until it started to crisp up. Then we flipped it over so it was skin side up and moved over indirect heat so it could continue cooking until it hit 165 degrees. Then we began to baste it with the glaze before letting that tack on to finish somewhere in the realm of about 175 to 180 degrees. It's been about 5 minutes since I pulled the thighs off the grill, and honestly, that's about all thighs need for them to start to cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and give these a try and see how they turned out. That's really good. These are incredibly juicy. All that fat I mentioned that's inside of it did a really nice job of rendering, and so we've got a really nice, juicy, moist end product. My goodness, that pepper and the rub that I added just enough heat that pairs really well with that glaze. So you got a little bit of kick with the sweetness of that glaze itself. I'll tell you what, another reason I love thighs so much is there's so much meat on them, you get a lot of bang for your buck. Guys, if you're planning on grilling for St. Patrick's Day, definitely give these a try. And honestly, even if you don't want to cook thighs, if you want to go with ribs or even a pork butt, try the glaze out because it'll go really well with both of those options as well. And with that, we've wrapped up today's cook. As always, thank you again for stopping by. Make sure to give this one a like and follow us if you're not already to see more of the great content that we've got coming up. And until next time, happy grilling.